With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at marines.com.
Getting engaged is a moment worth cherishing. A one-of-a-kind ring that you design at Blue Nile can help your love sparkle. Just choose your diamond and setting. When you've found the one, you'll get it delivered right to your door. Finding the right engagement ring can be nerve-wracking. At Blue Nile, you'll have the expert guidance needed and a diamond guarantee that ensures you're getting the highest quality at the best price. Cherish all of life's moments and save up to 30% at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
He successfully organised and staged one of the biggest sporting events in the UK in recent history, Glasgow 2014. It helped put his now adopted home of Scotland back on the sporting map, and it was delivered on time and all done under budget. Now former American wrestler and current Chief Executive of the Commonwealth Games Federation, David Grevemberg, has an even bigger fight on his hands, ensuring his organisation has a future. I'm Michael.
And I'm John, and this is Great British Bosses from Anything But Footy, the podcast where we speak to the key people behind the scenes of sport in this country. And you could say Glasgow 2014 has a lot to answer for, as not only was it a brilliant occasion from Usain Bolt on the track to Kylie Minogue at the closing ceremony, it brought Michael and I together to finally start this podcast. Working for rival radio stations TalkSport and LBC, we got along, we teamed up, and have now covered all the major events since, like the Olympics, Paralympics, the Rugby World Cup, Wimbledon, London Marathon, and the Tour de Yorkshire.
I'm David Grevemberg, the Chief Executive Officer of the Commonwealth Games Federation.
David, thank you very much for accepting the invitation to speak to Great British Bosses from Anything But Footy. At the time of recording, the Birmingham 2022 Organising Committee have said there will be no Athletes Village as planned in Perry Bar. And the potential host for 2026, Hamilton, said they might want a bit more time to sort things out. And that's all happened in the last few days. So first question for you, how are you? How's your week been?
It's been a busy week. Started off on Monday with an exciting 6-hour consultation and presentation to the Hamilton City Council, which really was an opportunity to enroll the City Council in the concept of a games for both recovery and accelerating regeneration on the back of the recovery efforts, and really just trying to embed a real sense of understanding that this is more than just 11 days of great sporting competition. And then, of course, we moved on later in the week to our announcement of a necessary decision to basically create clusters of accommodation sites, which will be mini villages across the West Midlands. Whilst the regeneration scheme in the Perry Bar area of Birmingham will still be built because of COVID and because of some of the market challenges. It was more prudent and more responsible that we looked at alternative accommodation. But again, it's a regeneration program that wouldn't be there if the games hadn't come to Birmingham. And so we're happy to see that it will still serve its purpose with the local residents for the long term.
So two big challenges for you this week. Birmingham, though, have come up with a solution, and it's similar to the one that Manchester had in 2002, which is the use of things like university accommodation. So is the Hamilton question, if you like, bothering you more right now?
I think it's a process, and there's understandable anxiety in the world right now, and there's apprehension around major sporting events. We released earlier this summer a report that actually goes back to Manchester and covers the success and outlines a clear return on investment of the past several games, really looking at what we call our value framework. Both the economic and the social value of hosting the games over a number of cycles in a number of different markets. So we're very confident with the approach that we're taking, the lessons that we've learned, and our unique value proposition. And that continues to refine itself in these kind of weird and wonderful times of very, very, different social discourse, as well as, something that has, I think, affected everyone around the world, certainly around the Commonwealth, and with the COVID-19 pandemic.
We'd like to talk to you about your career, David, as we progress in this podcast. And you used to
Sure.
work for the International Paralympic Committee. So I wonder, just on Hamilton and talking about, the fears, are you glad in some ways that it was the Olympic year that the pandemic happened, that actually you can watch and learn and see how these multi-sport events like the Olympics and Paralympics will deal with this before, say, Birmingham comes along, and hopefully you'll be able to reassure Hamilton?
Well, it's great to have test events before you, in many respects. I don't envy, but really respect the work that both the IOC and the IPC are doing to really push things, in the right direction and continue to deliver sport. It's by no sense of the imagination an easy feat. Certainly just upholding the ambitions of the new norm and how those are impacted, for better or for worse by the pandemic. I think there's probably three things I've noticed that have come to my immediate attention that I think are impacting the world of sport. And to answer your question, I'm definitely happy that we have a bit more time to really figure out what is going to allow us to exercise our duty of care in terms of safety, and ultimately deliver a positive experience for the athletes that still has that long-term legacy contribution that is so important to these events. But what I've really noticed is that people are now having to cooperate differently. The public, private, and third sectors are working differently. Lots of innovation is now coming to the forefront on how we use the digital form and digital platforms to enhance the experience, protect the experience. And I also think that, we'll certainly see how operationally that's going to play out in venues and so forth. And I think finally, the other aspect, I think there is an inevitable consolidation that is going to occur. So you're going to start to see fewer days, potentially fewer athletes in these major sporting events and fewer sports, just by the nature of their complexity. But you'll also see the opportunity for co-hosting arrangements and other different models or styles of hosting these events. So it's going to be interesting, but I really do wish both the IOC and the IPC much luck over the next few months as they lock down their plans and work through the various scenario planning.
When you've had your Zoom calls, David, with your pals from the IOC and the IPC one evening over a gin and tonic or a beer, have they said to you, we really don't think this is going to happen next year? Or are they going, with the only way we can put this on, as you've kind of hinted there, is to change it so dramatically with no, say, for example, behind closed doors?
Yeah, I think it's there's various scenarios, and I think it really is one of those moments that's just in time. So they're not rushing to make a early certain decision. They're making decisions just in time because it gives them as much time as possible to exhaust all options. And so I think they're trying to create scenarios where they can make this as positive as possible of an experience, with obviously with respecting and protecting people, but not lose the wonderful promotion and empowerment that the games provides as well. So it is, but they've, for the conversations I've had with many people in the Olympic movement that are much closer to the operations in Tokyo, they're delighted with the decision to continue pushing towards the games, but very, very, not complacent at all in terms of ensuring that every stone is, turned upside down. But there is a sense of optimism and hope, which is, which I think is necessary if you're going to continue to push these things forward. But I do think it does also, to those 3 points I mentioned earlier, I really do think this entire experience is going to make all of us look at things much differently for the future.
Listening to those comments and you saying then the way that events have unfolded over the past few months are going to change things, do you feel then that this arms race, if you like, that cities engage in to host an Olympic Games, a Paralympics, or indeed a Commonwealth Games, in the way that Birmingham is going to have a sort of satellite event in India with archery and shooting, is that perhaps the model? If Hamilton turn around to you and say, actually, 2026 isn't for us, could we see a Commonwealth Games maybe taking place in a number of cities or a number of regions around the world?
I've said it a few times that I think we're at a point where nothing should be off the table. I think we need to look at, how do we continue to add value and generate value for the people we represent and serve. And, it's been, since 1960, I think it was, or the 60s rather, that we had our only Commonwealth Games in the Caribbean. But, because just the geography is challenging, and obviously the environment is challenging. How do we, with hurricanes and so forth, and how do we actually make a Commonwealth Games or Commonwealth sport opportunities available in the Caribbean if we're not willing to be flexible with our current model? And so I do think we could start to take looks at all types of different models. The biggest barrier to entry with most of these events right now is the concept of the village. And so that is one of the areas that we're looking at, and obviously the Birmingham situation gives us a great opportunity to come up with some agile and workable solutions when it comes to a multi-site village concepts. But many villages, unless there is a need for new private housing or social housing or a combination of the two in a particular municipality or urban setting, it's very difficult to justify that build without really challenging the real estate market. So these are all the considerations, but I think the biggest one is, how do we generate not only economic value but social value for the public, private, and third sector investment that goes into these major sporting events.
Was there a danger then potentially with the Commonwealth Games that you could just have got to the point where you're essentially flip-flopping between Australia, where there's maybe half a dozen cities that could potentially step up, and the United Kingdom, where there's a kind of similar amount of cities that could step up? And actually what you're talking about here is a spread of events, so that one city hasn't got to build a dozen sporting venues, a village, a press centre, a broadcast centre, which might just be too much. There's not many cities in the Commonwealth, I guess, that can do that.
Yeah, I mean, the Commonwealth, on one side has, it's a very interesting geography. We have, of the top 20 emerging cities in the world, half of them, 10 of them, are in the Commonwealth. So, this is something, it's, urban sustainability, smart cities is something that is happening all over. But the biggest challenge we need to really overcome is making sure that, when we deliver a world-class event, that the facilities are world-class for that event or when it's necessary for them to be world-class, but also community relevant, not just in terms of design, but also programming. And the need for multi-sport, multi-purpose, multifunctional facilities in a number of cities and countries is becoming more commonplace. And so, these are things in terms of, future planning of games, what sports are on the program, what countries are best at hosting which sports, velodromes, the fact that the UCI does not have a certified velodrome in Africa. We have one velodrome in the Caribbean, in Trinidad and Tobago, which is, world class to the nth degree. These are challenges, and we're not saying, and I know the UCI is not saying everyone should build a velodrome unless there's a good business plan. So these are challenges we need to look at sports and look at the formats and the styles and really work through in terms of our evolution of our sports program as well.
David, one more question on Hamilton, and then we will look back and talk about you in a bit more detail. But for people that don't know, Hamilton was looking to stage the 2030 Commonwealth Games because it was 100 years, the anniversary edition of the Commonwealth Games, the Empire Games as they were then in those days. The team that are organising it in Hamilton have said this week that they haven't quite yet confirmed how much taxpayers' money will be needed in Hamilton now, and a decision is likely to be made in September. Now, you came, as Michael said earlier, under budget and on time in Glasgow. So you know that you have to be transparent with the public to take them with you, don't you? To get them on board.
Absolutely. Yep. It has to be, public led. And that's exactly the point. And that's why enrolling the local city council and the local municipality and their constituent bodies is just absolutely critical. So they can shape, and really what this Hamilton 2026 bid team has offered is the opportunity to shape these games, to reinvent these games in Hamilton, and to make choices on where do we want to accelerate regeneration, where do we want to invest in capital developments, and that's the stage we're at right now. They have created a number of options based on the sports program they're looking to deliver and their games concept. And now the next step is enrolling both the city council and engaging the citizens within these communities to make some choices about if we're going to host these games, this is the best area for investment right now. And whether that investment comes from the private sector, the public sector, the province, or the federal government, or the local taxpayers themselves, that's almost the secondary element to really deciding what do we need now, and how can these games help us accelerate those efforts. Both the needs and the demands need to be balanced. But this is really critical part of it of ensuring that people are invested and maintain their longer term interest through something that is inevitably disruptive for a while, but has enormous benefit. And we've seen it in Manchester, we've seen it in Glasgow, we've seen it in Birmingham, and we've seen it in Gold Coast, and we've seen it in India. You look at the legacy of the Delhi 2010 games, and we're going on our 10-year anniversary. Dame Louise and I went back to India last year, and the legacy is alive and well from the Delhi 2010 Commonwealth Games as well.
You're listening to Great British Bosses from Anything But Footy. We're speaking to David Grevemberg, the man in charge of delivering the Commonwealth Games from the Commonwealth Games Federation. So, David, as we begin then to talk about your career, I have a suggestion for you. You need to get a delegation from Glasgow across to Hamilton because the Glaswegians and the Scots felt their games were to quote them, pure, dead, brilliant. And that's a phrase that you will remember well, because they were the games you delivered, of course.
Yeah, no, it was really one of the greatest and proudest moments of that I've been a part of, and I felt so privileged to have fulfilled the role that I had the opportunity to fulfill, but also to really become vested and embrace and be embraced by a wonderful city and region.
Is it home still, David?
Very much so. Yes, I like to say I've raised two wee Scots now. So both my children are just my son's just finished high school, and my daughter is just going into her fourth year this year, and this is very much home. And we'll say we're both born in Germany, and despite my nationality being American, they've lived their entire lives, between Germany and the UK, with the majority of their life here in Scotland. So it's very much home. How
did you get to Glasgow? Talk us through it, from your childhood in New Orleans to
wrestling,
a wrestler, and
yep,
missing out on the Olympics yourself as well. Talk us through that.
It was an interesting journey. I was born and raised in inner city New Orleans, and it was went to New Orleans public school for years, and then I went to the private school out in the suburbs. And for those who are maybe less familiar with New Orleans, we have wonderful, beautiful scenery and gorgeous architecture, but we also have some of the most deprived and poorest communities in the country. And some people witnessed that or had the opportunity to see it firsthand with Katrina. But growing up in New Orleans, it was a city that used the World's Fair in 1984 to redefine itself. And I remember as a boy, we had the worst public schools in the country. The at that time the literacy rate was the worst in the country, heart disease capital, and we had the homicide rate, the highest homicide rate. So it's a tough city, and a city that was kind of knocked off its feet. The World's Fair came in 1984 and gave the city a real vibe, and the city started to change itself. And what that really did for me was made me realize, wow, and one event could make us feel good about ourselves. Created some of the proudest moments of my childhood, in terms of experiencing new cultures and and looking at the pride of our own city and what we had versus what we didn't have. And sport played a major part in that as well. So, and to make a long story short, wrestling was my sport of choice. I did American football, I did track, I did swimming for a bit, but wrestling I just excelled at. Did well enough to get a collegiate scholarship, and wrestled in college, wrestled internationally, went out for the Olympic trials in '92, and lost to the inevitable bronze medalist Chris Campbell for the Olympics, and then tried again for '96. Did very well at the U.S. International Open. Took first at the International Open. Was on my way, and had a career-ending injury on my knee, and which grounded me. So here I was, aspiring, inspiring, and then diving, and that instead of thriving. So I retired and went into sport. Went into my area of study, which was sports management, and worked with the U.S. Olympic Committee. Worked in the lead up to the Olympics and the Paralympics in 1996, helped create the very first high performance plan for the U.S. Paralympic team with really sport specific qualification criteria, and started to work very closely with the Paralympic movement from that point forward. Also had the opportunity, so after Atlanta, I also started my own business and went back to school at the same time and started to do consulting. And so I represented a number of athletes, worked through the Goodwill Games, a number of events in the lead up to Sydney. And in 1999, I was approached by the International Paralympic Committee to help open up their world headquarters in Bonn, Germany, and went in as their sports director and served for 10 and a half years through the creation of the IOC IPC agreements and the first integration or inclusion of full medal events in the Commonwealth Games in Manchester, and many other world championships and Paralympic Games later. I decided, after traveling 160 days a year on the road, that in 2009 I was going to look for other opportunities, which brought me to Glasgow. And I came in as the director of operations, served a few months later. I was made the chief operating officer, and eventually was appointed to the role of chief executive officer. So, and an American running the Commonwealth Games in Scotland, taught me a lot about myself, and about the work that I do, and inevitably made me fall in love with the Commonwealth sports movement as well.
You mentioned there about traveling, David. I mean, lockdown, you've obviously been stuck. How's the Wi-Fi been?
Yeah, well, let's put it this way. I haven't been this grounded probably since high school. So this is the first time that I have not been moving, not only on a weekly basis, but on whether a monthly basis. It's been I can definitely empathize with Zoom fatigue, and I'm working much longer. And dare I say, even harder. And so I do think, someone said it best when they said, you're not working from home, you're living at work. So I think it's, and that is the way it feels some days. I've found it, quite hard to separate from work. And particularly when you're working in such a global organization, and the global nature of the work that we do. When you're going to bed, someone's waking up, and or when you're waking up, someone's going to bed. So having to juggle and be accommodating, respectful, and exercising your duty of care for your team and for your staff has been something that has really been the top priority. But yes, I'm looking forward to some vacation time in the near future.
We're going to finish up, David, speaking about some of the issues, some of the challenges around Birmingham 2022. I want to talk to you about venues and diversity, for example. But just one more question on you and your career. You mentioned an American coming into the Commonwealth and being based in Scotland. Is it a case then that you bring your American ethos and values and try and impose that on the Scottish Organising Committee and now in your role at the CGF? Or do you just have to kind of adopt some of their principles and some of their ways of working?
It's a great question. I would say probably many people tell me I'm not your typical American, whatever that means. But, I've been outside the States for many years. I mean, almost 21 years now. And one of the things I try to do is to give kind of the social license to everyone I work with to challenge me if they ever feel that I'm imposing values on others. Because I think it's important that teams collectively establish what they value and the values they seek to uphold. And in the case of the Commonwealth Games Federation, it was actually quite easy. Humanity, equality, destiny. In terms of we value people, we value access and inclusion, and thus equality, and we value destiny, which is collectively we want to unleash people's full potential to achieve their ambitions and aspirations. From that standpoint, those are we have found that those are very universal. But what I've tried to do is to adopt the values locally, understand what those values, help people articulate them, and also establish the right culture to actually be able to live out the character and the personality that are underpinned by those values. And culture is something I really probably work on more on esse.tablishing the right culture in organizations. I think sport has suffered because of an over-dependency on patriarchal hierarchies.
I was going to say, so when you talk about values there, and you've got the Commonwealth, which is such a diverse selection of countries and territories, how much of an error of judgment then was it that the board of Birmingham 2022 didn't reflect that, really?
Yeah, I think probably our biggest regret is not being more prescriptive on equality, diversity, and inclusivity, which we've made a commitment now. Because the games were sold to us very much on the notion of the diversity of Birmingham, and that was we said this is the Commonwealth city. Dame Louise was very outspoken on that, so that was certainly a regret that we weren't more prescriptive in our host city contract. I can tell you we will be for the future. But it's also how we can, these constructs of governance are very representative of each of the different organizations that contribute. So we have some members at large or independent members, which are selected, and in this case, many of them have been selected through DCMS and government. And then you have the institutional representatives. So the fact that Dame Louise and I were the representatives, the CEO and the president on the Birmingham board, we made a decision, which we had been talking about for some time, to ensure some diversity on this board in terms of thought, in terms of voice and experience, that we needed to make a change. And Dame Louise took the leadership position and of course resigned from the board, and our colleague Sandra Osborne from Barbados has taken on that role, and she'll add a tremendous amount of experience and perspective.
So final question then, David, will Birmingham be ready? Will the Alexander Stadium be built? Will the Sandwell Aquatic Centre be fit for purpose? And will Birmingham host a good games in 2022?
I think Birmingham's going to host a fantastic games. I think the legacies that we've sought to create there are still very much in the priority of the delivery partnership. We're doing everything we can to support, obviously the bricks and mortar, but this is a huge opportunity to bring this community together. There is work to be done, but it's also an enormous opportunity for us to, address the future brand of the Commonwealth and to showcase ourselves as a really progressive movement for change, for social change that upholds peace, sustainability, and prosperity, and not just on esoteric terms, but actual tangible results. And we have, I think you'll see a number of areas of impact and measurable results that really speak to each one of those areas during this very difficult time.
So yes or no, the CGF is relevant, will stay relevant, and will celebrate its 100th birthday and continue to go from strength to strength?
Most definitely. I think we're more relevant than ever before, simply because of our demographics, our geography, that we represent, and of course our shared history.
Well, David Grevemberg, the Chief Executive of the Commonwealth Games Federation, thank you so much for your time in speaking to Anything But Footy and Great British Bosses.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather, now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.